Okay. Oh, so many questions. You asked me so many questions. What is my life like? What's it been like? Crazy is the only word. I've seen most things that most people wouldn't even want to see. I've been all over the world doing this work, and has it had an impact on me? Yes, it has. It's opened my eyes very wide to see what's going on in this world today. I cannot believe how human beings treat each other. Because they treat each other so badly, they treat the Mother Earth just as badly. There's no compassion for each person. There's no compassion for the earth. We wonder why we're in such a mess. Without compassion, we are totally lost as a species. The earth can survive without us, but can we survive without the earth? That's a question we have to ask ourselves. And it's getting more and more likely that we won't be to survive without the earth, obviously. So we need to do things. And from a small child, I've always been aware of that. Especially when I was seeing and hearing things that other people couldn't see and hear. You know, we call these the spirit world, spirit people, human beings. And yeah, you're right. What is a spirit? Well, you are. I am. We're inhabiting a corporeal form. We're in a body. Body comes, body goes. I always remain the same. So if there is a spirit and there is a spirit world, where do we go? Well, I can tell you a little story about this. Many years ago, I was asked to go and give a talk on Remembrance Day in a church, a spiritual church this was. And it was really packed with people, and I was thinking, and I'm talking about 40 years ago, I was thinking, what do I talk about? What do I know about the last war? I was born just after the war, so I really know nothing about it, only what my father suffered. And as I'm sitting in my home before I went to the church, I become aware of a man standing next to me, a young man in his 20s, maybe, or he looked 20s. And he communicated with me, and he told me his name, and that he died in the First World War, he said, in the Battle of the Somme. He said, I've come to help you because you give a thought out for some help for the talk. So I went, oh, that's really nice. I said, what's your name? He said, my name is Jim, you can call me Jim. I said, okay, Jim. I says, I see you there. You know, meaning I see him at the church. He didn't need a car, ride in the car. Or maybe he did. Maybe he did come in the car with me. I weren't aware of him. I get in the church and I get on the rostrum and, they present me and I stand up to give a talk and I can't see Jim anywhere. I can't feel him. I can't see him. I'm thinking, oh God, was that my imagination? You know, I got like 100, 150 people there and they're waiting for me to talk. And I'm sort of coughing and spluttering and I'm sort of going, and a minute passed, it seemed like 100 years. You know, I was starting to sweat. All of a sudden, I've become aware of this young man. He said, I'm here. Oh, well, thank you very much. And then he went on to speak about his life, his young life, not so much in the physical world, but how he died and what life is like on the other side. So I relayed this to the congregation. And I think after I'd finished, about an hour, 3/4 of an hour, lots of people were in tears. Were actually in tears. It was that powerful. And I wasn't really thinking about it. I was just relaying what was being said. Well, after it finished, I thanked him for coming, and he disappeared. I got back home, and I think I got to my home around about 11 o'clock in the evening, back home, because this talk was in the evening. And I sat down in the lounge and just trying to get back to myself, because, you know, it's quite a lot of pressure when I'm doing one of these things. And I become aware again of Jim. And again, I thanked him for coming, and we spoke a bit, and he said, would I write a book about his life? So I said, look, Jim, you couldn't ask for a worse person to write a book. I said, I'm badly dyslexic. I don't see words. I think you've got the wrong person to do something like this. He said, no, we'll do it together. And over time, we brought a book into being about how he died, how he came out the body, what he saw, his life over there, what he's doing now. And we've become quite close, if that's the word, you know, a ghost and a biological being. Because often I'd be talking to him, and when people would walk past me with that, they would look at me as though I'm crazy because I'm talking to myself. But I could see him and I could hear him. So we eventually got this book out. We called it 7 Steps to Eternity. And it became a fairly bestseller. It's very strange how that came about, but it did. And we're still selling them today. And there was the things that people were saying about the book was quite tremendous. I would get phone calls nearly every other day saying, I took your book to bed with me to read. I haven't slept all night until I've finished the book. And I had many people saying this to me. So it was quite an impact. So that really was my first book, first attempting to write. Could it be written better now? Yes, of course it could. I understand that I could have written it better. But at that time, it came about, and a lot of the things that he was showing me, or some of the things he was showing me, was pictures in my head of situations. And one of the situations, it was really quite hard because at one time it was a Sunday and I was ready to go out to give a talk on the Sunday afternoon. And just before, a couple of hours before I went out, I decided to do a little bit of writing. And he came and he's showing me pictures, and it was of a concentration camp in Germany. He was there helping the souls leave. And it was so heartbreaking of what was going on, not just on the physical world, not just what was being done to people, but what they were suffering after death, being held there by these very low entities who were being controlled themselves by darker entities. And his job, he became what they called a rescuer, somebody who could help people. But it took a lot of work, a lot of understanding how to do this, you know. So really, that was a really interesting story. But I had these abilities from young, and one of the abilities I had, or still have, is where I can transfigure. And how does that work? Because you hear of transfiguration, and you know we've got many photographs where you can see me transfigure to people, or even to animals. You know, 2 things I can transfigure into, 2 animals. One's a lion, and one is a dove. And we've got pictures of this. You can see this, you know, where I completely change into these 2 animals, and you can see the complete change. So this was sometimes a bit awkward because I could be sitting talking to people and people would start staring at me and being quite scared, quite looking in amazement, because they could see some form of white, we called it plasma, ectoplasm, just build up in front of me like a screen, and a face would appear in it. Woman, man, child. Just very clearly, you could see them very, very clearly. And generally, these beings that would do that to me was for the mums or dads or brothers, aunts, family members, friends of the people sitting with me or sitting around. It got so strong, so interesting that I decided to share this with people. And I thought, well, okay, what I need, it's better it's done in the dark, yeah. And it's what we use in the dark as a light, is a red light, which is placed just in front of me here, like this, just in front. So the light is shining on me. And not from down below, shining up to me. And I would wear something dark so you could see the ectoplasm, which is white clearly, and have a dark background at the back of me. And I would demonstrate this to 100 people or whatever it is, and very successfully. People would recognise their loved ones, their mum, their dad, whoever, very clearly. And I remember, just shows you how the spirit works, it's really interesting. I remember one evening I was doing a demonstration in my house, and there was about 20 odd people, because you couldn't get many more into the lounge. And I was demonstrating this, and the first being that showed himself was an Indian chief, a plain Indian chief. Everyone could see him clearly. Big headdress, everything. And the woman who was helping me in the sense of, we call bringing them through by talking with them, because they need to hear your voice. They don't know if you can see them or not. They need to hear you say, yes, we can see you, no, can you build up stronger? They need to hear your voice. And she was speaking to this entity through me. And all of a sudden he boomed out very loudly some words. And the woman said, wow, your voice is like thunder. And he said, this is my name, Thundercloud. This was his name. And he says, soon you will have proof of me. Okay? So the evening went very well, and people could see loved ones, and yeah. About a week after that, me and my wife was going to an antique, went out for a ride, we ended up at an antique centre, and we're looking at different things, and there's a picture on the wall of the antique centre for sale, and it's a painting on buffalo hide, real buffalo hide, and it's a painting of an Indian chief, and his name was Thundercloud. How does that happen? Now the story with that as well, which is really interesting, the guy who owned it was telling me this picture, this painting, was found in a priest hole not far from the antique centre. They were clearing out the house and they found a priest hole, and this was in there, and in the back of it was a letter, and this painting was sent from Canada to England in 1890 something, I think, or 1886, something like that. And what this Indian said to the woman, matter of fact, the woman was my ex-wife, my wife at that time. And she said, well, who are you for? And he says, I am your guide. Okay. But where they found the picture, my wife was born 5 miles away from where they found the picture. How does that happen? A picture all the way from Canada, a painting of an Indian chief called Thundercloud. Nobody, knew him, I'd never seen it before. He comes through in Transfiguration, shows himself, gives his name, and then they found this painting 5 miles away from where she was born. Well, you call it coincidence, but interesting, isn't it? So we had many strange events, and some of them were very sad. Because I remember I was going to do a